whatever is happening to you is senseless. There's personal karma that could be multi-incarnational, and there's collective karma. And as I've said all along, I believe that we are going through a great awakening, a collective ascension process. The solar system is heating up. It's a validation of these ancient religious prophecies from many cultures. And therefore, I have never doubted for a minute that we are going to have a soft landing and that it's going to be okay. If you are not really appreciating what the class of Earth is here to teach you, then you might not be ready to turn into an ascended being. At that point, if you do ascend, you're now moving into a reality where you have all the cool stuff that Jesus manifested, the telekinesis, the levitation, the telepathy, all of that becomes normal. It might not happen right away, but it does. And this is not for everyone. You don't just get it handed to you. You have to have appreciated the positive. You have to be slightly more than 50% oriented towards helping people rather than manipulating and controlling them. Service to others as opposed to service to self. So if you reach that service to others threshold, if you're at that over 50% level, even if you're just slightly over it, then when this solar event takes place, which I absolutely believe is going to happen, I've got tons of science on that, then you'll be fine and you get transformed. The Bible has probably the most extensive discussion of this in the book of Matthew chapter 13. And this is where it discusses the concept of the harvest. And Jesus makes a parable of the wheat and the tares. Now, a tare is a weed. So the basic, most important biblical metaphor of ascension is Jesus making an analogy. This is my opinion. Others might have a different one, but in my opinion, Matthew 13 is the bottom line. Most important part of the Bible's teachings on this, and Jesus makes an analogy saying that the kingdom of heaven is equivalent to a crop, and that the holy positive forces plant wheat in the crop, and then the adversary, the negative one, the evil forces are allowed to plant weeds in the crop. Now, normally you wouldn't do that, and normally if you have a crop and there's weeds that become visible in the crop, as the crops are growing, you're going to have footpaths between them, and you can walk down, and if you see weeds, you pull them out. Everybody at the time of Jesus would know this. So why in the world wouldn't you pull the weeds out as they're growing? This is where Jesus starts to speak in a parable and gets paradoxical, because what does Jesus say? He says, we must allow the wheat and the weeds to grow to their full extensions first, and only at the time of the harvest will the weeds be plucked from the wheat one by one, gathered into bundles and burned in my barn. And that's, again, a metaphor. So there's this idea that at the end time, that there is some sort of separation in which the negative elements are isolated and identified and plucked out one by one. This is a biblical prophecy. And what we're now seeing with the indictments that are sealed is that this is taking place. People are being plucked out one by one. They pop open a sealed indictment, they grab somebody, and they close it up again. And so this is happening over and over again. Much of the DS has already been defeated. And we talked last week about how the Pindar has already been nailed, the top guy, in this case in the Rothschild banking dynasty family. So that's not insignificant at all. That's a very, very significant thing.